Good morning, Mark here for another Monday morning video for you. Last week's video seemed to go down very well, so I'm very pleased to be back this Monday morning and sharing my coffee break with you. I hope you have had a good weekend. Were you watching the tennis? I was very much watching the tennis and really enjoyed the weekend's tennis matches. We've actually got a really good article about the links to language learning in tennis, so I'll link to that in the description below this and also within the email that I send out, so you can have a look at that. Some very interesting words used in tennis. Anyway, as I said, last week's email seemed to go down well, and it was great to see. I was quite humbled to see so many very long Duolingo streaks. I was quite chuffed with my 250, but you're doing ever so well. So we had Heidi on 365, Jacqueline on 400, Kerry on 452, Ellen on 802, Bonnie on 806, Charles 811, Kathleen had over 1,000, Griffiths 36 had 1,155, Dave had 1,300, and Lat PH, I think, won the league, as it were, with 1,645 days of continued language learning on Duolingo. So very well done to you all. If Duolingo works for you, fantastic. Of course, it's also great to see so many of you using Coffee Break along with Duolingo and all the other resources that you use on a regular basis, because that little bit of learning on a regular basis definitely helps. Now, talking of learning on a regular basis, we've got some new content for you this week. We have our masterclass, which continues, and for our masterclass students, we have an activity tomorrow. And then on Friday, lesson 4 of the first module. So we hope you're enjoying things and looking forward to some new content this week. I was having a look over the weekend at the masterclass and all the discussion that's happening, and it's so great to see all your homework being posted. And of course, it's great to see the team responding to that homework and you learning from the comments, both your own comments and the comments that are being posted on everyone else's homework. So well done to everyone in the masterclass. Of course, our club content also continues. We have our Coffee Break Club, which features content for French, German, Spanish and Italian learners on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And that's at a beginner level or a lower intermediate level. If you're not familiar with the club, check it out at coffeebreaklanguages.com/club. And there's new content coming this week. So Monday today is listening activities. Wednesday is reading activities, and then on Friday we've got another video lesson for you in each of the languages at 2 levels. So you can look forward to that in the club. Now, we're also publishing more podcast content this week. So we have our Season 3 Lesson 18 in German and Italian. In German we're looking at reflexive verbs. Now, we've done reflexive verbs before, but this time we're looking at reflexive verbs which use the dative case. So I wash my hands to myself, that kind of thing. I won't go into too much detail. First of all, this is a video for all of our language learners, but you'll find out more in the German lesson if that's what you are learning. In Italian, we've got a great lesson. It's a lesson all about irregular plurals. So the ways in which Italian words, both nouns and adjectives, form their plural, but that doesn't always happen according to the very regular patterns. So this episode will cover almost everything you need to know about irregular plurals in Italian. In French, we have a magazine episode. So this is episode 7 of season 2. And it's all about, what is it about? It's about Impressionism and Impressionist painters. So that's some great practice for you at an intermediate level. Some listening content, and then obviously we go through the text and discuss it in detail. And the same in Spanish, so season 4, lesson 7, and that's about a sporting event which happens in Asturias in the north of Spain. So you can look forward to that later this week. Of course, we have our usual social content on Twitter, on Instagram and on Facebook. Facebook Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Every Monday, Wednesday and Friday we post some content for you to help you build your language skills, understanding of grammar and your knowledge of the culture associated with the language that you're learning. And that is across French, German, Spanish, Italian, Swedish and Chinese, and in English too. So do make sure you're following us on the social channels in order to benefit from all of that. Now, this week, many of the team are on holiday. So I hope that they're all having a fantastic time, and I'm sure they will not be watching this video, which is absolutely fine if you're on holiday. But if they happen to be watching it, I hope you have a great holiday and deserve a well-earned rest. My own holidays aren't coming quite yet. That will be in a few weeks' time, but I'm looking forward to that too. But a little bit of a language learning story for you. This morning I was doing the Wordle and the Quordle. I'm not sure if you're still obsessed with these word games. Wordle came out, I think, towards the end of last year, or maybe in the middle of last year, but I've been doing it religiously every day, and I love doing the Wordle and the Quordle. And this morning when I was doing the Quordle, that's like when you've got to get 4 Wordles at once, there was a word. I was trying this word, and I don't want to give too much away because that will spoil it if you're doing the Quordle. But the word that I put in that was not the correct word was early, E-A-R-L-Y, or if you use epenthesis, early. That's going back to last week, but we'll not go into that. Although if you do want to know more about epenthesis, click here and you'll see last week's video. So yes, this word early, I thought, I wonder if that is linked in any way to the word Earl, just the way the words, the letters came up in the word game. It looked, okay, some of these letters are one colour, some of these are another colour. Again, I don't want to give too much away. But obviously, as I looked this up, because I had to look it up, I found out that early and Earl, the word for an aristocratic title, are not linked. So they come from 2 different roots, which is fair enough. But I did need to go into more detail with early and work out where that came from. It looks like a regular adverb in English, so with ly, but this EAR, it didn't immediately ring a bell. But then, of course, I realised that the EAR comes from the Old English word air. So we could see an example like, we continued for half a mile ere we stopped. So ere meaning before. So looking at this in more detail, this ere and then le, so le would be the adverbial ending, and le, again, I need to look into this, comes from the idea of like. So it is before like, or if we're saying quickly, it's quick like. So le is linked to like etymologically. And of course, it's also, we get similar endings in other languages. So for example, in German, lich is one of the endings that we would use. For example, the word frohe, meaning happy, and fröhlich, which also means happy, but it's more sort of joyful, or it's linked to the word frolic in English, fröhlich, frolic. So we've got this ending, le or like. And if you think about it, that is a very physical element. So if something is quick like, then it is likened to something that is quick. And I read more about this, and there is a philologist, a linguist called Weekly, who studied this and wrote about this whole idea of how adverbs are formed. And he pointed out that this physical idea of like contrasts hugely with Romance languages, where it's less about the physical and more about the mind. So if you think about the word mind, and in Latin-rooted languages, that becomes M-E-N-T or M-E-N-T-E. So if you're thinking about the word fast, or in Italian, veloce, but velocemente, fastly, quickly, or fluent in French would be courant, and then you that turns into couramment. So with the ment ending, fluently in French. So this M-E-N-T is linked to the mind. So it's really interesting how in the Romance languages the adverbs have a link to the mind, and perhaps the spiritual, if you like, and in Germanic languages adverbs have a link to the physical. So the like idea. I need to look into this in more detail because it's very interesting. It also brought up another word linked to air, and that is erstwhile. And erstwhile is probably my favourite English word. I don't know why, I've always liked the word erstwhile. And erstwhile is actually, and I looked into this in more detail, erst is the superlative form of er. So it's the most before, the most early, if you like. So erstwhile is at the time that was most early, or former, or once upon a time. So the erstwhile minister, the former minister, the minister at that time. So there you go. My question to you after all of that is, what's your favourite English word? If you're learning English, let us know if you've learned a new word and that you love. Or indeed, if you are an English native speaker, what's your favourite English word? I always think that an appreciation of your own language makes you a better language learner. With that, I will leave you. I hope that you have a pleasant day. I hope the sun is shining where you are and that it's not too hot. I wish you a great week of language learning, and I'll be back next week. But in the meantime, thank you, goodbye, and of course, happy coffee breaking.